Have you ever imagined that a tax war between the US and Canada could drive up food prices, disrupt tourism, and even push Alaska's economy to the brink of collapse? Trump signed an executive order imposing a 25% tariff on imported goods from Canada, including steel, aluminum, and other industrial products, citing the need to protect US industries from unfair competition and address drug smuggling concerns at the northern border. However, this move has escalated tensions, directly threatening Alaska's economy, which depends on trade routes through Canada. In response, Canada implemented a dollar-for-dollar retaliatory tariff, imposing a 25% tariff on an additional $29.8 billion worth of US imports starting March 13, 2025, and later announced a $30 billion tariff on US goods, affecting items like fruit juice, wine, household products, cosmetics, and paper goods. Beyond federal measures, provinces such as British Columbia, Ontario, and Quebec have introduced their own strategies, with British Columbia proposing a tariff on US commercial trucks traveling through the province to Alaska, increasing shipping costs and raising prices for essential goods like fresh food, cosmetics, and electronics. Experts warn that these higher transportation costs will drive up consumer prices, particularly in remote Alaskan areas reliant on road deliveries. Alaska depends on the 2,450-kilometer-long Alaska Highway, which runs through British Columbia and Yukon, for transporting 80% of its goods, making new tariffs a major economic threat. Additionally, the state's tourism industry, which relies on cruise ships stopping at Canadian ports, is also at risk, as strong retaliatory measures from Canada, particularly British Columbia, continue. Alaska could face an economic crisis, with disruptions in supply chains, transportation, and tourism. The Alaska government must work with Canadian leaders to resolve these issues, or the state will suffer severe economic consequences in the coming months. Meanwhile, the US stock market has reacted sharply, with the Dow Jones plunging over 330 points as investors panic. Amidst economic turmoil, Trump has not announced a response plan, instead turning to social media rather than addressing the financial crisis. Trump praises Elon Musk, calling him a great patriot, and even hosts a PR event at the White House, promoting Tesla, while the stock market is crashing. This raises questions about whether Trump is using Musk as a distraction from pressing issues. Meanwhile, the US faces backlash over its tariff policies, with the European Union announcing a $26 billion retaliatory tariff package, and Canada refusing to back down. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen strongly opposes the tariffs, stating that they harm businesses and consumers. In response, top US CEOs are in panic mode, seeking clarity from the White House, while Trump's own economic advisors appear uncertain about the administration's direction. Amid this chaos, Trump's allies propose an unexpected idea: annexing Canada to avoid tariffs. A close Trump advisor, Howard Lutnick, suggests absorbing Canada into the US for economic unity, prompting a firm rejection from the Canadian Prime Minister, who asserts Canada's independence. As economic tensions rise, American consumers face soaring prices on essentials, while the US Department of Education announces a nearly 50% workforce reduction, threatening millions of students' access to education. Budget cuts lead to teacher shortages, and Republican officials dismiss concerns about disabled students, claiming states will handle it despite budget constraints. Economic experts criticize Trump's policies, calling them chaotic rather than strategic. The situation escalates further as Canada threatens to cut oil exports, which supply 60% of US oil imports. This could trigger an energy crisis, as US refineries are specifically designed to process Canadian crude. Historically, Canada and the US have had a mutually beneficial energy trade, but rising trade disputes now put this relationship at risk. If Canada follows through, the US could struggle to replace its oil supply, leading to refinery shutdowns and skyrocketing gas prices. Unlike past energy disputes involving Russia and Saudi Arabia, the US and Canada are deeply interdependent, making the consequences of such a move severe for both nations. The uncertainty surrounding tariffs, energy policies, and economic stability leaves many wondering about the future direction of the Trump administration. Alternative oil sources would be more expensive and take years to implement, leading to a spike in gas prices, economic disruptions, and a potential supply chain crisis. If Canada follows through, the impact would be immediate and severe. Gas prices would skyrocket as the US relies on Canadian crude to stabilize gasoline prices. A sudden supply drop could cause prices at the pump to surge overnight, and US refineries, designed for Canadian heavy crude, would struggle to adapt without costly modifications. Importing oil from more distant suppliers would drive up transportation and insurance costs, further increasing prices. Industries dependent on oil, including transportation, agriculture, and manufacturing, would face rising costs, impacting consumers nationwide. There is no quick fix. The US could ramp up domestic production, but this would take time and face regulatory challenges. Increasing Middle Eastern imports carries geopolitical risks and higher costs. While renewables cannot replace oil overnight, the transition would be painful, hitting Americans at the gas pump and in their wallets. Canada would also suffer, as over 90% of its oil exports go to the US. An alternative export infrastructure is lacking. Disrupting supply could destabilize global oil markets without necessarily benefiting Canada. If tensions escalate, Canada might take partial measures, like limiting exports, prioritizing new trade partners, or imposing tariffs on US energy imports. A prolonged crisis could reshape the energy market. The US might push for energy independence, increasing production but facing higher costs and environmental concerns, while Canada could seek alternative export routes, strengthening ties with China, India, and Europe. Global oil prices could remain volatile, affecting economies worldwide. Ultimately, neither the US nor Canada can afford a full-scale oil trade war. In February 2025, the Trump administration imposed a 20% tariff on Chinese goods, escalating trade tensions. China retaliated by cutting US imports and strengthening ties with Canada and the EU, leading to losses for American farmers and businesses, while benefiting Canada and Europe. In March 2025, after Washington imposed a 10% tariff on Canadian oil, Ottawa redirected exports to China, which increased imports through the expanded Trans Mountain Pipeline. Now, 50% of Canada's crude exports go to China, reducing Beijing's energy reliance on the US. Canada also became a major LNG supplier for China, with the LNG Canada project set to begin operations in 2025, replacing lost US supply. China has also significantly reduced US agricultural imports since 2023, with soybeans being among the most affected products.